Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
For the Lord will not be slack, neither will the mighty be patient toward them, till he have smitten in sunder the loins of the unmerciful, and repaid vengeance to the heathen, till he have taken away the multitude of the proud, and broken the scepter of unrighteousness. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I'm so glad to be back with you. It's been a very busy, short few weeks and months, and I just want to thank the hijacker for coming on and telling you guys about Dana Coverfield's dreams and how they connect to what seems to be prophetic occurrences and the span of the next few months out. And so we will be providing that at some point on our YouTube channel. But this evening, I'm joined by my children, Justin and Joy Garcia, and we will be reminiscing on the events, the Sacred Word Revealed End Time Mysteries conference that just went down a couple weeks ago here in Atlanta, and how an incredible event it was. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll share a portion of their testimony and how they got involved in doing the work that we are all now doing together. And so, Justin and Joy, are you there?
We are. Thank you so much for having us. And we're also sharing a mic. So we're going to be doing our best and not make too much background sound as we share the mic. Joy's right here with me.
Okay, great. Okay, well, yeah, I'm glad to have you both here on with the listening audience. And for those that don't know, I don't know how you would have missed it, but if you did not know anything about the conference and what we were doing, what we were promoting, it is through Sacred Word Publishing that the Sacred Word Revealed conference was held, and the theme of this year's conference was End Time Mysteries Revealed. And we had a number of incredible speakers. Some, unfortunately, were not able to make it or present, and then we had many others that stepped up into the void and had were able to present and to share some of their research and teaching. And so it all was really remarkable. um, Let me give you a chance, Justin, if you would just run down the lineup and who ended up really speaking and what will be available. I know you guys are still working on making the single, separating the different presentations and making that available for others, and that people are interested in seeing and knowing when that will be available.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did live stream it for all patrons and for those who did make a donation for the live stream tickets. The live stream went awesome. It was great. We were able to basically fellowship with people virtually while we were, all gathered, all 200 of us or so, that we're actually able to gather in person. It was so awesome. Joy and I had found this place way before March when the original conference was scheduled to occur. And we had no idea that COVID or any pandemic thing was going to happen, and that's why we ended up having to postpone it to September. But we had chosen this place before March, before COVID, and it just so happened to be one of the only places in America where we could gather together without having to social distance. And it's one of the only places in Atlanta that actually has a religious exemption for face masks. So it was so awesome for us to be able to gather there. But yeah, I'll go over quickly just the conference schedule that occurred. And yes, we do have videos, professional videos that are actually much better than the live stream even, that will be coming out. Our brother Chris Tompkins of videoatlanta.com, he did volunteer his time, and he did such an amazing job. He's definitely a professional, and if you ever need any video skills or expertise, please contact him at videoatlanta.com. Chris Tompkins, we appreciate you, brother. And all of our volunteers. It was such a blessing how that all came together, but we'll talk about that a little later. The videos will be being released here on the Zen Garcia YouTube channel and the Endeavor Freedom YouTube channel within the next few weeks. We're going to just be releasing one every day that we don't have a radio show. And we did try to get a DVD set put together, but it's going to take something like 10 different DVDs to put together all the content. Wow. So we've actually been considering putting it all on one USB drive. So we did order a couple from Amazon today to see. There were 64 gigabytes, and the total amount of space that all of the video put together is going to be around 55. So we're going to test it out, put it all up there, and then maybe we'll be able to make one of those thumb drives available for purchase. Since I guess, most people don't even have a DVD. The only way that Joy and I could possibly use a DVD is by plugging up one of our older desktops and putting the CD in there. Everything's done, either just through the internet or through USB drives these days for us. So I think the USB drive might be well appreciated. But the lineup on Friday, September 11th, of course, the infamous day of September 11th, we all got to meet up. Everyone who came early. We left at 11:30 and we drove together to the Georgia Guidestones. And it was so perfect how it just fell together so perfectly. We had ordered this one gigantic bus and we had so many people. We were just not, expecting so many people because, a lot of people called a week before, 2 weeks before and said, I want to donate my ticket. I'm not going to be able to make it any longer. And then people would contact us and they would say, I'm thinking about coming. Do you have any tickets available? And we'd say, yeah, of course. We have actually some people that donated their tickets. So we didn't actually keep track because it was happening so often. But it just so happened that as we loaded the bus, there were literally 2 seats available in the front for Joy and I to get onto the bus. It was awesome. Like a 50-seater, and it was perfectly packed out. And then we had another couple seats next to us. We put all the snacks and the water bottles and everything, all of our luggage basically on those 2 seats. It was like so perfect how it ended up. And then of course we got beautiful weather, sunny weather. The Most High held back the rain for us and even provided some beautiful cloud coverage because it was pretty hot up there. And we did expose evil at the Georgia Guidestones tour. It was a blessing to be able to join together. We do have a video of that up on the Zen Garcia YouTube channel as well. If you haven't checked that out, so many people are asking, why are those tablets, why are the Georgia Guidestones still standing? Why didn't you guys knock them over, like deface them or something? And, what would be the result of that? We would just go to jail because, it's the property of the city of Elberton, Georgia. It's not like, these things are up there so that we can go expose the evil because they're so bold, the New World Order, to just place their evil commandments on there of depopulation and, world order established through a court of reason rather than, of faith and true logic. They want to support abortion and all these things. Anyways, getting detracted from the point. The point is that we got to go there. We got to expose evil. And when the Most High returns, he will be the one to destroy all of those evil things. It's funny that, actually the Georgia Guidestones were created to survive some type of apocalyptic event to guide the new age of reason that they believed was going to be the result of that apocalyptic event. But they haven't read their Bibles good enough, I guess, because the apocalyptic event is definitely going to destroy those things.
Yes, and with regard to the Georgia Guidestones, we are in this conference exposing the matrix of evil, and so it was a perfect setup. We are already considering doing a follow-up to this year's conference, but we're going to have that extra day be for presenters and for presentations. And so those of you that did join us, it was an incredible experience, and the Most High did hold back the rains and provide cloud coverage. It was, there was this 2 tropical storms, hurricanes going through here on the East Coast, United States of America. And it was supposed to be rainy the whole time, but as we said, the Most High did allow us to host this event and to make it a success, and then to be thereafter inside for the presentations. And so it all went really, it was miraculous in the way it all came together, even in the way that the number of seats on the bus, things like that, the synchronicities, it just shows the hand of the Most High and supporting this particular endeavor. And so can you just name the people that spoke, so people, when they go to and check out the live streams, they'll know, who actually did come and present, and the additions.
Yes, definitely. I do want to just shout out to everybody in the YouTube live chat. Hello, everyone. And Joe Radican, thank you so much for your support and your super chat. He quotes Matthew 18:20 and says, Zen's teachings and me right before bedtime. What a way to fall asleep. God bless you all. Love your work from Zapata, Texas. Awesome. We appreciate your support, brother. And shalom to everyone else. We really appreciate you all for joining us. A humble disciple said, let Chuck Norris knock them down.
Right.
So if by the grace of the Most High, Chuck Norris was saved, then when he returns with all of his army of angels clothed in white linen, maybe he'll send Chuck Norris over there and he'll just kick him down. All right, but anyways, I'll go through the conference speakers. So on Saturday, we did have opening worship both days. That was led by Timothy Heinen, and he's an awesome brother.
Thank you, Timothy.
Yes, that music was so awesome. He taught me actually that the tuning of music has been altered. I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically the way that you tune your instruments, they tweaked it a little bit a couple decades ago, I guess, and it made less harmony. And it actually caused like more chaos in our bodies and the cells when this music would pass through. But he actually tunes the older way, which I think he calls it the God tuning or something like that. But that's something interesting to check out. The worship was absolutely awesome, and he just basically led us through meditation and psalms. It was beautiful. And the first speaker was myself, and we did just publish that video yesterday on the Zen Garcia YouTube channel. And you can see that one has been made public. So we will be releasing them one by one in order. So the next presentation was from Zach Mason. The next one was from Dr. Stephen Pidgeon. And the next one was someone that's, I think that you probably know. His name is Zen Garcia. And then we were supposed to have Stephen Ben Noon. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. So we had an AMA with you and Rob Skiba. That was an awesome time as well. Then Sister Diane Cover, who you're going to have on tomorrow night for your live show. She gave her presentation that was very well received. She's an awesome sister. And then Jake Grant went, Dr. Joy Pugh went, and then Rob Skiba closed the night out. So on Sunday, we opened up with praise and prayer again with Brother Timothy. Then Diane Cover spoke. Then we had Laurel Austin speak, who's been on a couple shows with you, who's also a great helper at Sacred Word Publishing, who has done so much for us, and she gave an awesome presentation. Of course, everyone gave an awesome presentation, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Sister Laurel. She spoke on her testimony of her children and vaccine injury and depopulation vehicles. That was something that touched so many people, and when that does get released, please do mark it in your to-do list to check that out. Then we had Dr. Stephen Pidgeon again. You gave your second presentation. Rob Skiba gave his second presentation. Zach Mason gave his presentation. And then we closed out with Brother Nathan Reynolds, who did an awesome job of encouraging people to go forth, sharpen their swords, and prepare for battle. It was an awesome time.
Yes, it was amazing. And then, spur of the moment, we had the incredible unfolding of people wanting to be baptized. And so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let Joy speak on this one.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, the baptisms were such a blessing. It was actually at a park, a public park that we didn't realize was in the backyard of private homes. And through this whole process of the baptisms, first off, it was just such a blessing. Just seeing all these people just yearning and seeking for the Father, and to grow and to dedicate their lives in front of their brothers and sisters. It was just such a beautiful experience. But we actually have that video as well up on YouTube. And if you have not seen it, even if you have not seen it all the way through, you might not know that actually we got a visit from the police. And so we had the sirens, the lights going out and on. And I remember seeing the police come, and I saw some of our brothers going up there talking to the police. And as they came back, I said, "What happened?" They said that they had given us 2 minutes, and we still had quite a few people to baptize that needed to be baptized. And so I went up there and I said, "I'm so sorry. We had no idea that this was, a private park, or that we had, trespassed or anything like that. But we're just here getting people baptized. Like, is there any way that we could have a little bit more time?" And the policeman said, "I think what you guys are doing is amazing." And he said, if I could, I wish I could give you guys all night to baptize people. And I said, "Thank you so much. Can we just have some more time just to finish out?" And he was like, "Yes, absolutely. We're still getting the 911 calls for noise complaints, because every time someone would get baptized, we would just scream in celebration and just pure joy." And he said, "But every time I get the call, I'll deter it. I'll say, I'm on my way. We're on it, something like that." So it was amazing that the Father even protected us from the 911 calls and all the different complaints, and that we had police officers that were willing to really hold back the complaints and kind of protect us. So we're just really grateful for the Father who worked through these policemen to have these people baptized. And it was just such a wonderful blessing to be able to watch it all unfold. And another small detail that seems like it wouldn't matter, but so I was recording the whole time, and I remember seeing, and we had lights coming from the back, but some of our brothers and sisters were holding up flashlights. And I remember seeing just a swarm of mosquitoes everywhere. And just FYI, even in our own backyard, Justin and I's backyard, we used to just get bit up every time we went outside. And then we didn't even see the mosquitoes, but we'd just be covered head to toe sometimes in mosquito bites. What I thought was phenomenal was that during this baptism, I could see swarms of mosquitoes all over, and not once did I get bit, which is, I think, phenomenal. Like, it's just amazing. So praise the Most High that he protected us, that he sent those policemen to be there with us. And but yeah, anyways, they did give us more time. They let us finish the baptisms. I even asked them, like, should we stop celebrating so loudly? And the policeman said, no. He's like, "No, you should celebrate. This is something worth celebrating."
Awesome.
So yeah, what a blessing that experience was.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And yes, thank all of the local sheriffs and deputies and the police officers across the nation. I ask the Most High to watch over, protect, and keep them safe and their families, and all those that are serving us and taking care of the
Amen.
public trust. So
Yeah, it's crazy, in California and in Chicago, and basically all over the world, there are these police officers that are being sent to shut down churches, persecute Christians. In California and actually a lot of places now, with new research that's being released that suggests we shouldn't be able to sing out loud because we could be spreading COVID-19.
Oh my
In
God.
California, they actually adopted that a while ago. You can't join together in church. You can't sing worship together. It's crazy, how much grace we were given, to be able to join together, to not have to social distance, to hug, to hold hands, to worship together, to join together at this baptism event, making loud noise, and unfortunately probably breaking the law. We didn't mean to, of course, but we did have the police called on us, and the police came out. They weren't even wearing masks. They were just like all on board. They thought it was awesome. I mean, what a blessing it is to have that place. We actually didn't even have the baptism planned. Back in March, we had when Dr. Pigeon was going to be able to still make it in person. He did, of course, give 2 presentations virtually, but when he was going to be in person, he was going to lead the baptisms. And when he wasn't able to make it, kind of the baptism thing just kind of fell to the back burner, and we didn't really think of it much. We didn't have very many requests at all. Actually, no requests after that. But on the last day of the conference, a brother that was attending came up to me and he said, it's really been put on my heart that I need to be baptized, and I found the perfect place to do it. It was only a 4-minute drive from the hotel, so it was right down the road. We all got to go down together, and Brother Nathan Reynolds, praise the Most High for him. He was in contact with his brother and said that he would lead the baptisms, and he did. So it was such a blessing to be able to join together. And Joy and I pulled up after doing some final admin stuff, and after the conference closed out, and we pulled up. It was already dark by then, and there they were. They were all gathered in the water, and more people pulled up, and we just jumped straight in the water, and it was an awesome ceremony. Praise to the Most High.
Amen. Yes. And I could, having watched the video, I could sense the presence of the Holy Spirit, and just how everybody was deeply and profoundly moved by what you were doing and the experience that all of you were sharing together. And so certainly perhaps, sometime during the day in the next conference, if this is a public park, then, doing it during the daytime, that hopefully there would not be complaints, and we would be able to really bless a number of people that would like to do that. Even myself, I would certainly like to be part of that when we come together again.
Absolutely. So we are considering doing another conference next year. I think that this one was just such a blessing. So many things could have gone wrong. So many things did, end up being problematic, but the Most High just provided so many solutions. It was truly a blessing in every way, and we know, as long as you take that step in faith of the Most High, He clearly was with us, and we want to do that again. We want to take another step next year, and I think that it was definitely a blessing for me, for Joy, for you, for all the speakers, and for definitely the attendees as well. It was just such an awesome gathering. With the whole past 6-7 months, we've kind of been cooped up in our own houses on house arrest, and then to be able to join together was a blessing. But I think even if it was just regular life, it would have still been such a great blessing to be able to join together with like-minded truth seekers. And I definitely want to do it next year again, Yah willing. So we are considering anywhere from Passover to Sukkot, and yeah, that's basically that's it for me. I don't know exactly when we're gonna do it, so we are in discussions. We did send out a follow-up email to all the attendees for feedback. So if you were an attendee and you did receive that follow-up email, please don't forget to give us some feedback. We're also taking feedback or suggestions on what theme the conference should have for next year. Of course, we probably could keep it as End Times Mysteries, but we're interested to see, if people are interested in some other things, maybe some pre-Adamic times, or prehistoric times, maybe some before the flood, some Enochian wisdom that was shared, things like that.
Antediluvian age, or even a couple things, like perhaps even each one of the days, since there's not a lot of people that do speak on those kind of niche topics. But so yes, if you would, people, please send us a couple of things that you would like to hear on, and as far as the different topics of discussion, or a particular theme, that maybe we can do multiple. So
Yes, let's consider that, definitely.
Did actually already get um, two people who filled out the feedback request, and the two things that we heard back so far is that they wished that the conference was longer, which is awesome. They wish that there were more speeches, more topics, but at the same time, they also wish that there was more time for fellowship, to be able to spend with one another, to spend time with the speakers and etc. So we definitely are hearing what you're saying, and we'll definitely be implementing those things for next time. And we're just so grateful that people showed up, that people came. And, I heard over and over again throughout the weekend, people coming up to me saying, that they felt like we were already family. And that's exactly how we feel. And it's amazing to be able to meet our family in person, and actually put faces to names, and to be able to fellowship and actually give out hugs. I remember the first couple of hugs that I gave out, people were like, are you okay with hugs? They're like, yes, let's hug. And it was awesome to be able to actually be around people who are not afraid, and to embrace.
Yes, that was really funny, because people were wanting to tap elbows or whatever. Initially, they didn't know how to really gauge or react our response, but no, we did not have any concern, and praise God, everybody was protected, and the Most High preserved us and kept everything with regard to all of that. Kept all that away from us, and so it was a beautiful experience. And so I know that you wanted to kind of go into each one, as far as both of you working together as a couple, and how this all came about with regard to the Sacred Word Conference, and the work that you and I and all of us are now doing as a family and a ministry. I mean, it's grown and evolved so rapidly and so incredibly, and it's all, for the glory and for the honor of the Most High. So.
Well, the main reason that I wanted to have this show is because as we were meeting people, we realized that a lot of people were asking about our personal testimony, about how Justin and I met, how we ended up working with you, Zen. And it came quickly clear to us that although Justin and I have gone to, I think, 2 conferences now and shared our testimony, giving speeches and such, and we've also done our show on our channel Engen, ENDGEN, and other channels even, but we realized that we don't think that we've ever actually shared our personal testimony here on your channel, Zen. So we figured it was time, and a lot of the people who asked, we just simply didn't have time during the conference to fellowship as much, due to the fact that we were just, if you were there at the conference, I'm sure you noticed Justin and I just running, sprinting back and forth from place to place, trying to make the conference run smoothly, etc. So that being said, we wanted to spend this time to be able to share our story and kind of give you some background info on how this all came to be. And truly, it all is a testimony of bringing glory to the Most High. So we're grateful for the opportunity to share it with you all.
Yes, I'm excited, and it's something that people should know about, because they seemingly want to know more about us as a family as well. And I think that a lot of individuals and other families want to have and to unite their families in a similar manner in serving the kingdom. I know that's a dream for all of us, in doing and serving the kingdom, and to dedicate our lives to putting forth such effort, and that, maybe not a lot of people do have that opportunity, but for those of us that do, what a grand blessing it is to do this kind of work, and to also help others, as far as the less fortunate and orphans and widows, and others that we also dedicate and platform in ministry and the work that we do, and supporting through our Endeavor Freedom charities and those kind of contributions as well.
Yep. I just wanted to read Humble Disciples' comment. I just subbed to Engine yesterday. Can't believe I never knew about it. Great content. We appreciate your support and your encouragement. Yes, you can find mine and Joy's personal YouTube channel, Engine, kind of like an engine, like vroom vroom. We brand ourselves as fueling the final generation, kind of like an engine, fueling pushing forward knowledge to prepare people for the end, because we are also the end generation, end times generation. So you can find both of our personal extensive testimonies there. Also a couple recordings of presentations that we gave at different conferences. Do we want to go ahead and start with our personal testimony now, and then we'll kind of get into our missionary testimony, and then we'll get into, leading up to the conference itself. It's been a long walk. I was born in 1989. I'm definitely dating myself. I'm 31 years old. And when I was born, my mom was actually at the hospital with this man whose name was James, and he had like dirty blonde hair and blue eyes. And my mom tells us so. she thinks it's a funny story. I think it's a pretty funny story as well. But when I was born, they were expecting me to kind of look like him. But when I came out, they noticed, oh, I got a little Asian baby. So of course, she got pregnant in high school with, you, because you're my dad. And, she wasn't expecting that you were my dad. And when that happened, it definitely threw a lot of young hormones probably all around the place. But basically, she raised me, and I was with her through a couple different marriages. The first marriage, I think I was 3 years old, and this guy, he was someone to me like a dream dad. He was my baseball coach. He played video games with me, and did all these things that a typical dad would do. He made bacon for me in the morning. He was just there, and that, as a young boy, to have a dad was important. But this man and my mom got a divorce, and he, completely disappeared from my life. So as a young child, I understood what abandonment was. And also from the first grade, in first and second grade, I experienced death. And that's something that many people to this day, they don't know how to cope with death. They don't have developed thoughts on what death is or what is after death. But in the first grade, I had this friend, his name was Chase, and he would come to school once a month. At the beginning of the school year, he came more often, so we got to know each other. We got to play with each other, and then he came less and less frequently to once a month, and his head was completely shaved. And one day he just stopped coming altogether, and I found out that he had died from cancer. And at that point, I was in first grade. I didn't really know what in the world is death. I just knew, okay, well, I'm never going to see him again. But the next year in second grade, my great grandmother, yeah, that's a double great grandmother. She was close to 90. She passed away as well. And this time, I saw the effect that it made on my family, on my mom. And because of this, I was in deeper reflection on what death is. And when I considered what it is, I just imagined myself in this black box. And I was, I wasn't on earth. I wasn't anywhere. I was just in absolute nothingness. When I would go into this headspace where I was imagining what death was, and I just saw nothing but blackness all around me. And I felt so lonely, like there's absolutely nothing. I'm going to have absolutely nothing when I die. It's just blackness, that was my understanding of death, and it horrified me. It kept me up all the time. So here I was, not even 10 years old yet. I had experienced 2 deaths. I had experienced being abandoned by the guy that I thought was my dad. And I had all these questions and no one to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell my piece of my beginning of my testimony. So we'll be going back and forth, kind of sharing bits and pieces. But I personally was born in South Korea, where shamanism is really prevalent. So if you're not familiar with shamanism, it's basically where you worship the dead. And so they're really worshiping, Satan and demon spirits and such. But because of that, if you're not familiar, Korea is actually really well known for the fact that a lot of people are demon possessed. There's lots of possessions, and kind of in the same way that we have it's like Kim Kardashian kind of shows where it's I forget what those types of shows are called, but reality TV. Yeah, reality TV. There's a lot of shows in Korea where they follow demon possessed people, and every episode is a different possessed person. And so anyways, that being said, there's a lot of kind of ghost stories and such. And growing up, I remember hearing the stories of my mom, and how she became Christian was the fact that she actually lived in an actual haunted house. So what happened was that my grandfather, who is a businessman, he is a very much a numbers analytical, no such thing as ghost kind of man. He heard of a house that was being sold for insanely cheap. And the people in the neighborhood, they all knew that I think that a family had been slaughtered in that house. And so then the rumor was that their dead spirits still lived within that house, and that the house was haunted. And my grandfather, being the analytical man that he is, was like, absolutely not. That's such a joke. What I'm seeing is a good deal. So he purchased that house, and my mom grew up in that house for a while, and she actually I think she literally didn't sleep for almost years to a certain point, because she would be visited every single night by people. It's really much, if you've seen the movie The Grudge or The Ring, I actually really can't stand watching stuff like that at all whatsoever. I hate that kind of stuff, because in Korea, I mean, that's just the real stuff. That's not a joke. That's not. And my mom would always tell me that, the only person, or the only one that can save you is God, is Jesus Christ. And the reason that she believed that was because, and the reason that she knows that for a fact is because she would be visited by these people in long white gowns with long straight black hair, very much Grudge-like. And there would be a row of them, and they would all take turns choking her. And at the time, my grandmother was trying to find the fix for her. So they brought a lot of shamanists would come and chant over her, and they would have Buddhists come, and all these different religions would try to pretty much save my mother and to be able to get her out of this misery. And nothing was working at all. And as a child, my mom was going to school, and one of her classmates actually invited her to church for the first time. And that was the first time that she ever heard of Jesus, of Yesunim, which is Jesus, Yahusha in Korean. And they encouraged her to pray in his name. Just say Yesunim, scream out to the true Father, to the true God, to Jesus Christ. And the moment that she did, she said that literally that line of grudge-like people just screamed. They screamed and they fled. They said, they screamed out of just terror. And she was never visited by those spirits ever again, and she was relieved from that horrible experience. And ever since then, she, gave her life to God, and she became a strong, hardcore lover of Jesus, of Yahushua Christ. And that being said, I grew up with a mother who was truly on fire for the Lord, was just passionately in love with her Creator, with her Savior. But the only problem, so that being said, she actually became a pastor. So we moved to America when I was 4 so that my parents could both become pastors. But that being said, very much, as you know, as many of our listeners know, churchianity, when you get into the backgrounds and the administrative and the staff part of church, you see a lot of hypocrisy, and I saw tons and tons of it. I saw a lot of hypocrisy. I knew from my mom's stories that God was real, but what I saw in the church really made me just want to have nothing to do with it. I'm talking about pastors who would go up in front of the stage, have their kind eyes and telling people how to not sin, but then at the same time, as soon as they get off the stage, they're, cheating on their spouses, being abusive. When they see homeless people, they push them away, and just a lot of nasty stuff that I really just didn't want to be a part of. And I also had a lot of questions about Christianity and about the logic behind faith. I really felt it was a cultural thing. Part of me was thinking if you are born into a Buddhist family, then you're just Buddhist. If you're born into a Hindu family, then you're a Hindu, and etc. And I also felt like church was very much a place where you just made money because of all the stuff that I was seeing in the background. But the pastors would also, because I had so many questions, the pastors would also tell me that I needed to stop asking my questions. And they said that it was a sign of a lack of faith. And I just hated that so much. It just made no sense to me. And so all of those kind of experiences really made me want to get out as soon as possible. And it also made me a raging evangelical atheist. So I started, every time I met a Christian, I would start asking them all of my logic-based questions. And as soon as they didn't have the answers to it, I was like, yep, see, you have no idea what you believe in. And, all of this is just a trap so that, they want to control you. And that was my perspective on Christianity, on faith, on all of it. But I'll turn the mic over.
Okay.
Yep. So I was going into 4th grade, I believe, as my mom and that man went into a divorce, and then she married another man who was actually a very abusive man, verbally abusive, physically abusive. And, all of this added up to just extreme depression. I was just a really depressed kid, but I was learning how to silence all of my depression, how to silence all my questions about what is death, how in the world did I get here? Why am I here? What happens when I die? What happened to my friend and my great-great-grandma who died, and all the people that die? Of course, it happens all the time. What is it? What is death? Well, nobody could answer the questions. There was definitely no faith in my family when I was being raised with my mom, and I had to learn to basically plug myself into places like video games and sports and skateboarding and rock music like Linkin Park. This was like the really big thing when I would be cutting the grass in 6th grade. That's all I would do is listen to Linkin Park, try to memorize all the lyrics. And now when I hear those things, it's so depressing. It's just horrible to think about the types of things that we plug ourselves into, and all of these, killing with guns, games, and all the things that we're introduced to as children that is supposed to be totally normal. Well, this is what I was plugging myself into to try to silence my questions because I didn't have anywhere else to look. I didn't know of anywhere else to look. Of course, the Most High was always there, wanting me to come to knowledge of Him, to know Him, but I didn't know yet. So I had learned to silence those things, and I loved skateboarding. I know that it's probably in my blood. Of course,
Right.
this man also, the abusive stepdad. This is when I believe it was a little bit after your accident when you were paralyzed and when you were finally recovering. You reached out to me and wanted to, develop a relationship. And I remember you tried to send telescopes and things for me and letters to me, and that man hid all of that from me. So I actually had no idea. He didn't want me to get to know you, and that was another form of abuse in itself that I didn't even know of when I was that age. But unfortunately, that was the reality that I was living in. And then in 8th grade, by 8th grade, I had actually delved into Wicca, and I had met people at my public school that were really interested in all of this witchcraft and things kind of like Joy was talking about in shamanism. And I was interested because I just wanted to know if it was real,
Right.
Because when you experience death, you think, okay, well, either that's the end or there's something to this whole world that I don't know about and I don't understand. Right. So I wanted to just go and see, what all this was about. And I was into that just to know if it was real. I definitely learned that it was a very evil and dark side of the world. And I learned that it was real. I was actually horrified by it. And my mom was always into horror movies as well. And I was like the type of kid that I just had so much anxiety. Every time that I would walk into a room, I would have to check behind the door just to make sure there wasn't like a monster or like some killer there waiting to get me. I couldn't, when I would get off the bed to like go pee in the middle of the night. Well, basically I wouldn't even get up. I would just pee in the bed. And when I got up in the morning, I would have to jump off of my bed like at least 3 feet away just in case there was somebody like under my bed. And most of the night, I actually just couldn't sleep. I was an insomniac, and I would just stay awake staring at my closet, waiting for some monster to come out of the closet and come get me. I was just so horrified. I was so full of fear. Yeah. But that, I didn't have anybody to tell me that those horror movies that my mom was watching with me were fake. Or, I knew that death was real, and I just thought, that's going to come for me. But then 9/11 happened when I was in 8th grade. And, 9/11, that was a world changer for most of us. It definitely, it reignited all of those questions that I was kind of learning how to silence with video games and skateboarding and rock music and, friends. But all of those questions, they came on really hard. And then I became very suicidal, and I thought of death. Of course I had thought of death a lot, but even more now, I just thought of death constantly. And I didn't have any faith. I grew up in the Bible Belt, but I just thought everyone was stupid. The same way that Joy felt, that's exactly how I was. I was like, you're only Christian because you were born here. If you were born in India, you'd be a Hindu. If you were born in Saudi Arabia, you'd be a Muslim. You don't know why you think what you do. And, everyone that I questioned, they didn't have answers. They were, that's basically what it was for most people. It was just a tradition and something that they walked through that they never really thought about. And I didn't find any purpose in life. All I found was fear. I didn't know what was going to happen. I actually declared myself to be an atheist, and I thought all of my Christian friends, they were just totally stupid. They had no idea. They were just, spoon-fed, and they were happy, and they just really had no understanding in life, And here I was, this young 13, 14-year-old kid at this time that was just so full of questions. I was just questioning everything, you know? Things that people even my age now don't ask themselves. You know, but these things kind of led me on that drive that, you know, is the thirst for truth that was
Right.
really important all my life. But then in 8th grade, my mom did marry a rather wealthy guy. He wasn't like, you know, millionaire or anything, but for the first time we were actually comfortable. We had a lake house, we had a boat, and, you know, I totally forgot my depression. I just plugged into that, to having money, to having all the friends over that I could want. And, you know, we pursued drugs and alcohol and all of the sports and video games and everything, you know, that Satan wants us to dissuade us with. I was plugging in there and seeking those things. But then in 10th grade, my friends started dying again. I had friends die of alcohol poisoning from drinking and driving. And I remember the first friend actually that had died. Her name was Sarah, and Sarah Edwards, and she died in August of 2005. And I remember going to the funeral, or actually going to the viewing before the funeral, and I walked up to the casket. It was like a 2-hour line. There was just so many people that were just shocked. You know, it was the first time anybody had ever really experienced death of someone that close to them. She was just this really friendly, awesome girl, and there were so many people's lives that were touched by her, but her death touched a lot of people as well. And we were waiting in line. I remember I got up to the casket and I looked at her body. It was just so, it was dead. You know, there was no life in her, and whoever she was, it wasn't there anymore. You know, I could speak in her ears, and the vibrations of my voice would go into her ears. I could open her eyes, and the light of this world would go into her eyes. But whoever she was, it wasn't there. And that was the first time that I realized, you know, okay, we are more than just the flesh. I am more than just this temporary vehicle of flesh. And I wanted to know what is that? But I didn't search for it immediately. At that point, you know, I just lived carpe diem. That's how we're taught in school, you know,
Yes,
like
yes.
just live it up, because, you know, you never know if you're going to have tomorrow. You might die
Right.
later today. And that's true, but because of that now, I think we need to seek truth, you know. But back then, I just
Absolutely.
thought, okay, we need to have as much pleasure, as many parties, as big of parties as possible. And that's what I dedicated myself to, especially, you know, from my friends that had died from alcohol poisoning and from drinking and driving. I thought, you know, I need to live it up for them, for their sake. I need to live it up. But then after I graduated high school, I actually ended up getting kicked out of my house because, you know, as you can probably tell, I was depressed, rebellious, atheist, very against the world, and I was, you know, involved in a lot of alcoholism and partying and doing things that I shouldn't have done. So I did get kicked out. I think we're gonna go to break soon, right? So
Yes,
yeah, I'll
yes.
pick it up after the break. We can.
Okay. I will add one thing really quickly with regard to Ray and your mom marrying him, that he was not concerned with me having a relationship with you. And
Yes.
that was a huge turning point in all of our relatings and, you know, our ability to come together and share time and space. And so, yeah, we'll pick that up on the other side. We'll be right back, everyone, for the second hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
For the ungodly said, reasoning with themselves, but not aright, our life is short and tedious, and in the death of a man there is no remedy, neither was there any man known to have returned from the grave. For we are born at all adventure, and we shall be hereafter as though we had never been. For the breath in our nostrils is as smoke, and a little spark in the moving of our heart. And if you continue on, that's the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, you see about how it is that the rich and the elite, they basically rationalize just being, living for the moment and living in sin and not having any worry or concern of repercussion or judgment or an afterlife. And that's why they also, as it says within the scriptures in this chapter, they make fun of Christians and these sons of God, those that are children, disciples of the Most High. And that's a lot of the kind of mindset that is now prevalent in the world. And we see even in the scriptures in the end of times, the end of days, that it speaks about a falling away. And certainly that
Mm-hmm.
seems to be also what we see in the world. But let me turn it back over to you, son.
Okay. Well, I did want to touch on what you had mentioned. The new man that did have a lot of money that my mom had married, he did actually help me reach out and find you and reach out to you. And we actually were able to get to know one another and speak together. And but at this point, I was a teenager, and what teenager wants to spend too much time with their parents? Of course, I was interested. And it was crazy, just getting to know you. Every other weekend I would be able to like spend a day or two with you, and that was really awesome to be able to see just how much we have in common.
Right.
'Cause whatever it is that carries over in blood. I was like, my mom always said I was like a spitting image of you. And being a poet, just
Right.
writing, and that wasn't something that you had taught me. That was something that was like in my blood.
Yes.
It was awesome. And then you were able to, share some conspiracy things with me, and
Yes.
but I wasn't interested at that point.
Right. Yes.
I was a teenager, and I ended up rebelling and getting kicked out of my house and moving to Kentucky on my own to pursue basically just partying. And I lived in the town of the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky, and I just partied. I had a cool job, and it basically just all fell through. Once the money ran out, I was basically just starving, and I was in my little 1-bedroom apartment in Lexington with all these people that were definitely not my friends. They looked at me as somebody who was just there to party with them, and they were basically right. I wasn't really there I didn't even know what it was to make a real friend. All I knew was how to please myself, because everyone around me is going to die. I'm going to die. I need to just have pleasure, right? Live it up. But when I ran out of money, living it up dried out. And there I was, in that 1-bedroom apartment with nothing but my questions again. And thankfully you had sent me some books that I had carried with me to Kentucky, and they weren't like religious books, of course, but they were basically like martial arts books, because that was something in common that we had. That before your accident, you were like a martial arts master, and I was, interested in MMA and fighting, and
Yes.
Also studying that. But it was really interesting to see the roots of the martial arts, the Eastern martial arts that you were sharing with me. Hapkido and the wushu, the Chinese wushu, and all of these ancient forms of martial arts. They really tied into like Taoism.
Yeah, it's a way of being.
I was studying Taoism, and of course, they have some really interesting spiritual concepts that introduced me to the fact that, wow, all of these ancient cultures, they have a lot to say about these questions that I have about who I am. More than just the flesh, of course. Who am I inside or outside of the flesh, and how did we get here, and all of these things. But Taoism really, it was beautiful. They had beautiful poetry. They had really cool martial arts, but that wasn't really it.
Right.
So Long story short, I was basically starving in that apartment for a while, and my mom had left her credit card information on her papajohns.com account. So like once a week I would go on to Papa John's and I would order a pizza, and that's basically what I would survive off of. And I'm thankful for that too, you know. I'm sure she probably saw that
Right.
going out on her credit card statement, but that was as much help as I had basically was given, and all of my work had ran dry. I was just completely running dry and running on empty. But inside, I was still fueled up, just wanting to know those same questions, wanting to know where my friends that had died had gone, and wanting to know the truth of how everything got here. Because even at that point, you know, I was a very logical person. I was very evidence based and very mathematically minded, and evolution just did not add up.
Right.
It's such nonsense.
Right.
I can't believe that my generation has been so brainwashed into really believing that the evolution makes sense. It's just, it's not statistically plausible when
Right.
you compare, you know, the beautiful creation that we live in, that's so symmetrical, that's so well designed. To think, you know, when you look at a book, you know it has a writer. When you look at you know, a painting, you know there's a painter. And the same thing, you look at a creation and you know there has to be a creator. So I wanted to know, you know, if there is a creator, I want to know him. And
Yeah.
of course, I had all those same atheist questions, like, you know, if there's really a creator, he must be evil because, you know, there's evil on the earth. Why would he allow that to be? And that's something that a lot of people probably still wrestle with, and that's why on InGen, the channel that Joy and I have, I actually made a video called "The Top 5 Questions That Atheists Ask to Christians," and I give the explanation of those questions in a logical form, you know. But there was nobody to tell me those answers. The only thing is that there is answers, so you just have to go searching for them. So I went searching for them, you know, and I studied in Taoism, like you had those books of martial arts that you had shared with me, and this is a point where me and you and our relationship really grew, because I had nowhere to go. You know, I was still looked at as a rebel by my stepdad and my mom. You know, they didn't allow me to move back to them, back in with them, even though I was, you know, poor. But you did. You allowed me to come stay in your home, and it was awesome. You put a lot of material in front of me and never forced me to look at anything with a certain perspective. You just encouraged me to go on that journey. Because you as well went on that journey, and you know where the end is. But it was an interesting journey. You know, I studied Taoism, and in that I studied Buddhism, because, you know, in the East, I started in the East, and in Buddhism, it was a really interesting, you know, I still think a lot of it is really beautiful to want to help everyone, to want to detach from our own self-pleasure. That was something that really stood out to me, because all my life I was just like, please myself. And every morning, you know, you wake up and you're like, oh man, I need more alcohol. I'm like hungover, you know, or I need more drugs. I'm like coming down from these drugs. You know, you realize that this world isn't where the real pleasure or real satisfaction of your soul comes from. You know, I had that gaping hole that needed truth to fill it. And even though Buddhism, you know, taught me to kind of deny myself and that whole concept, it wasn't full of truth. It was more of just like, you know, there is no truth, there is nothing, you know, separate yourself, and then you'll become enlightened when you realize that nothing is important. You know. So it was interesting, but I was like, all right, well, I want to know the truth. I want to know the history of the world. I need to know who the creator is. And I started studying. What's that?
why it was created, what
Yeah.
all this is about,
Yeah, exactly.
why we're here.
What's my purpose? Why am I here? And
Yes,
of
yes.
course, where do I go when I die? What happens?
Right.
So I studied the roots. Buddhism in itself I thought was beautiful, and I said that I still do think parts of it are beautiful because they have that self-discipline. But a lot of the roots of Hinduism make its way into Buddhism. Idolatry, idol worship, and I thought that was very interesting because all in grade school we're all taught the same type of stuff like Greek mythology, Roman mythology,
Yes.
and of course this leader Zeus, who led this army of lower class gods, right? And I thought that wow, well, all the way in the east, Hinduism basically took over the whole world to the east, and Roman and Greek mythology basically took over the whole world to the west. Well, they have their roots around Israel, in the Middle East, in Babylon or Iraq, and in Egypt and Sumeria. So I was interested in, of course, I studied Hinduism, I studied the Roman, the Greek mythology, but I wanted to know what was, even older than that. And then you get into the Sumerian mythology.
Yeah, the Anunnaki, right?
You get into the Egyptian Egyptology, and you actually learn, wow, these pantheons of what they called gods really did exist. But who are they really?
Right.
Like,
that's key.
The mathematical mind of me was like, well, they can't all be separate and then all still be, the one creator, because there has to be one infinite above all.
Yes,
there can't be 10 infinites. There's one infinite that's all encompassing. This was just the mathematical conclusion that I was led to when I was studying to try to understand the creator and how anything could exist. And I was interested in who that one creator was, and I thought, well, they had a god over them whose name was Zeus. So you look at that god and he's evil.
Right.
He's absolutely evil, and I thought in my heart of hearts, the deepest truth that I knew, that I held on to from the time that I was young, was that love was the purpose.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, well, this guy, there must be something to him because he's not love. I want to know the God of love.
Yes.
This guy's the God of evil. So I studied a little bit deeper into Egyptian mythology, and you had introduced me to this book called the Colburn Bible. And that was an awesome book. The reading was interesting because they talk about the one true God. But the history of the Colburn Bible is that it was written by the Egyptians after the Exodus of the Israelites. And, of course, Egypt originally they were all worshiping all of these fallen angels, who they called the lower class gods. And they did all these evil things for them, but they were left in shambles after the Exodus. So they went on a search to find who that one true God of the Israelites was. So by this point, I always thought Christianity was just a tradition. It was a dumb offshoot of some, New Age religion or something. I didn't think that it was like actually historical. But then here I'm facing this historical account of an Egyptian, what they call the Great Book. And it was pointing me to the Bible. So, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to open up the Bible and actually read it for the first time.
Right.
And when I opened, the first 50 pages of reading through the Torah of Genesis, I was like blown away. It was a history book.
Yes.
And it was giving me clarification on things that, no other sacred text could really explain thoroughly.
Right.
But
especially who the watchers.
Right,
Anunnaki.
exactly.
Yes.
Getting to Genesis 6 and then seeing how, Satan had been led astray and how the fallen angels were led astray. They came to earth. They raped women.
Yes.
Just in Genesis 3, of course, the serpent seed.
Yes.
All of these things I was reading, I wasn't reading it from a church point of view. I was just reading it, and then of course, over soup and bread that we shared every day, I would tell you what I was studying. And I remember, reading about serpent seed and Genesis 6, and I'm like, wow, did you know that, Satan had a seed on the earth? And you're like, yeah, I've said
Yes.
that a long time. Everybody looks at me like I'm crazy.
Crazy,
But
right?
here you are, a brand new student of the word, and you see those
Yes.
things. Well, it was interesting. It was beautiful, but what was really the most beautiful point of my search for truth was when I opened the New Testament
Yes.
and I read through Matthew
Yes.
and I read the words of the Messiah. And then
Yes.
I realized exactly who is the God of love. When I
Yes,
read
right.
through his teachings, that he would leave the 99 sheep behind to go find that
Yes.
one lost
One.
one, and that there would be more cheering and more, happiness in heaven over one sinner that came to repentance rather than 99, righteous men. I thought,
Right.
wow, he wants me to turn around. He wants me to come home, and I'm ready. I want to know him.
Yes.
And I gave my life to seek him and prayed. And, I did share in a little bit in my presentation that was released yesterday about, the sleep paralysis and the things that came. But at this point, a lot of those demonic attacks did come. All of that delving into witchcraft and all of those dark things, they did not want me to come to find faith in the Messiah. And those sleep paralysis things, they hit hard. I would just be woken up and I would be unable to move, of course, and then I would be being tickled. And if anybody who knows me, I just hate being tickled. A lot of people hate it, but I really hate being tickled. But I couldn't move, and I would just be being tickled, and it was torturous. And sometimes, I'd be being choked, and just the fact that you're awake in your body and you can't move, it really freaks you out.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Right.
But these types of things, after a few nights of going through that torture, I decided I would call upon the God of love, and I called upon Yeshua. And as soon as I did that, the terror, all that darkness that was over me, it fled, and I would feel this warmth. It was like my blood was finally flowing back to my limbs, and I could move. Instead of being in sleep paralysis, I was able to move, and I was comforted by the Spirit that I didn't even know, but that was the Most High and my relationship beginning. So after that, I went back to my hometown. I stayed with you for a few months, and then we studied together. We worshiped together. It was awesome. The best time of my life. Of course, before I got married to my wonderful wife.
Yes. Of
But
course.
then I wanted to move back to my hometown. So my mom saw, my stepdad saw that I had changed, and they welcomed me back to their house. And I wanted to move back there to share the truth with all those friends that I used to party with. And when I did that, I realized they weren't ready for it. They thought I had absolutely lost it, that I was a Looney Tune, because it just doesn't matter to most of the world.
Right.
Truth doesn't matter. It's still to this day, most of those people are still caught up in the same lifestyle that we were living when we were 17, 18 years old. And they still wake up every morning needing to go to the grocery store to get a new 12-pack of their favorite beer, because it's not eternally satisfying. The only true eternal satisfaction comes in knowing your Creator and knowing your purpose in life, and knowing, that He is love and that we were made for love. And yep, so after that, I actually was praying, where in the world should I go? Where does the Most High want me to go? Because, I came home, I felt called to share my testimony with all my friends. Nobody was interested. So what should I do? So I was sitting at my grandmother and my grandpa's house. They live in the highest point in our old city in McDonough, Georgia. And it's the second to highest point in McDonough. And I was praying out back in the sun, and I was just wondering, God, where do you want me to go? And I heard the two words, Air Force. And of course, at this point, I had just learned about New World Order. I had just learned, about Satan and organized evil. And I'm thinking, Air Force? Why would you want me to go into the military? I don't want to support war. But, of course, I heard that in a prayer. So I considered I would just pray about it for the next few days and make sure that's exactly what the Most High wants me to do. So a couple days later, I was with my mom. We were coming back from eating dinner together, and we were in the car, and I was telling her about that prayer. And my mom, she had just gotten me back from. I had moved to Kentucky. I had moved in with you, and I was a new boy that her husband finally liked. She didn't want to give me up. She was like, no, just stay here. But we pulled up to a red light as I was telling her, and there was a bumper sticker on the car in front of us that said, "My son is in the U.S. Air Force." And I thought, okay, that's clear as day. It couldn't be more confirmation.
Right.
So we went to the recruiter, and it normally takes people like 4 to 6 months before they're able to go to basic training. And I was in basic training within 2 weeks. And I was used in so many different ways. People they were in my basic training flight. They had family members that had prayed for them to meet someone who was spiritually strong. I was able to be that person for those people. And that type of thing just led me all throughout my service in the Air Force. So I always tell people I was like a secret operative in in the Air Force. I was just an Air Force mechanic or an aircraft mechanic, but I was actually a undercover agent for the Most High. That was my true goal.
Like a chaplain. But the most important...
A secret chaplain.
Yes.
Because it's actually illegal, for you to share, to proselytize in the Air Force. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Joy so we can cover it. We have a lot more to cover.
I would also mention before I forget, I noticed a couple people mentioned in the chat that a lot of the details of the story of your Zen and Justin's relatings in the beginning and your hopes and your prayers for him even were actually in your book, A Different Way of Being. And also Justin also wrote a book that's actually very similar in style called A Prodigal Biography. So we'll put links to both of those if you guys want to learn their personal testimonies and kind of their stories and their poetry of during that time. It's definitely beautiful to see the way, Zen, that you prayed for Justin when he was so uninterested, when he was a young child to his teenage years, and how you were always there in terms of prayer and hopes for being a part of his life again. So that was just a beautiful thing I wanted to mention. But to remind everyone of where I was, and if you're just tuning in, Justin and I are going back and forth in our testimonies. So if you didn't hear the first part of my testimony, feel free to go back once this live stream is over. But the last thing that I did mention was that there was just so much hypocrisy within the church, and I had become a raging evangelical atheist at that point. And my first opportunity to leave the church was really when I went to college. And I really wanted to get as far away from it as humanly possible. So instead of joining a church, I joined a sorority, and it was a hardcore, well-known party sorority. So I wanted to get truly as much pleasure that I could have possibly gotten, that I felt like I really missed out on when I felt like I was trapped in this kind of trying to control your mind prison church. So instead of going to church, there were weeks where I partied 5 nights a week, and then I would drive with friends 8 hours to Los Angeles for raves on weekends. And that was truly my life, that and sharing my gospel of atheism. And one day I got this Facebook message from a guy named Justin James Garcia, and he had just lost his Korean grandmother, and he wanted to learn Korean. He wanted me to be his Korean pen pal. And quickly I found out that, and Justin quickly turns any topic that he talks with anybody about salvation, Yahusha, where people are at with their faith. So of course he did that with me. And I thought, okay, another person that I need to liberate from the church. That was my initial thought. And Justin was the first person I had ever met that had logic behind his faith. And he had answers to my questions because he had gone through all this, like, you know, the journey that he just described to you. So at this point, his faith was unwavering. I mean, he would bring up history, archaeological evidence, ancient text, science, and logic, and just... And he even brought in what he mentioned earlier, all the different world religions and how it all pointed back to Yahushua Christ. But for me, I had felt like I just got my freedom, so I really didn't want to hear any of it. I felt like my life was truly perfect. And I remember around that same time, my mom had actually encouraged me to go on a mission trip, and she knew that I think, had an inkling that my faith was definitely not where she was hoping it to be. I'm not sure if she knew that I was atheist, but she definitely wanted my faith to be stronger. And so she kind of not coaxed me, but she encouraged me to go by saying, you know, hey, this is a free trip to Tunisia and you can go backpacking. It's going to be so much fun. So I did go, and I actually remember thinking on the way there, I remember thinking, like, God, if you are real, please don't reveal yourself to me, because at that time I was so attached to my life, the lifestyle that I was living, and I just remember being almost afraid of a life-changing experience. But when I was there, as the missionaries were sharing the gospel of Yahushua Christ to these people, these beautiful people group, I was sharing my gospel of atheism to these missionaries. Like, even though Justin was sharing a lot of logic with me, it wasn't sinking in for me. Like, I still had so many questions, and for me, I thought, you know, until I get every single one of my questions answered, this is who I am. And so I remember, of course, the Father had different plans for me, and praise Yah that he did. I'm so grateful that he is the type of father that will go after that one, and I'm so grateful that he did. But one specific testimony that I do want to share that just has always been ingrained in my memories is there was this one time where we were in a city and we were on the top of a high mountain, and in Tunisia. And in Tunisia, on the top of the mountain, the mission group actually wanted to pray over the city. And I thought, you know, that's so crazy, but I was so tired, I closed my eyes. And as soon as I closed my eyes, it was almost like a really clear vision, like those old school projectors where, like, the light shines through and you see this, like, image. And I saw an image of an old man with eyes very droopy, so droopy, and a smile so wide that it almost looked like his eyes could actually touch the ends of his mouth. And I also remember, like, half his teeth being gone. So this was a very specific image that seemed I had never had an experience like that before. And then when we got down from the mountain, I remember this missionary group saying that we needed to now stand and just ask the Father, like, where we needed to go, and that we needed to be led by the Spirit. I remember thinking that too was pretty crazy, but as they were praying, I just started walking. And everybody was trailing behind me while I was going, you know, like, I was walking, you know, straight to the right, 1.5 miles here, and I was going all over the place. But then we were walking until suddenly we hear this loud, friendly voice being like, hello, I love foreigners. And it's this old man with eyes so droopy and a smile so wide, it almost looked like his eyes could touch his mouth, and he had, like, half his teeth missing. It was the exact man from the vision that I had just had. And I remember thinking, what in the world? I had no idea what was going on. And I remember just being in such shock, and my heart feeling like it was pounding out of my body. And this man invites us into his home, and this missionary group ends up actually sharing the gospel with his entire family that night. And he actually invited us to dinner. We stayed with him in his home that night, and throughout the night they were just talking about the Bible and Yahushua Christ and all these different things. And I just remember sitting there thinking, what is God real? I mean, I had clearly experienced him in that moment. And there's so many other testimonies like that, but I remember thinking, like, I even kept a journal at that time thinking, man, I now at this point I know the Father is real, and yet I was so not ready still to let go of that life that I had started to worship, really, truly. I had put myself on a pedestal and I started worshiping just the pleasures of the flesh. And I remember even on the plane, so like at this point, I clearly had just so many testimonies to share. And even on the plane ride back, I actually ended up sitting next to a very wealthy person from, I forget where, but he was also atheist. And I remember sharing with him, I'm atheist too, but I'm starting to think God might be real, because here's all the crazy things that happened while I was in Tunisia. And he and I were talking about, whoa, my goodness, yeah, I think God might be real. And I remember even starting there. But when I got back to America, I was right. I was right. I remember even that week, I ended up partying like 5 nights a week, even after that experience. And it makes me think of like the heart of the Father, who's so patient with us and so long suffering and so wanting us to be part of his kingdom, to live in eternity with him, and how he just fights for us. But I remember even through that, I remember feeling like I just had no control over myself. Like I wanted so badly to meet that God, to meet my Creator, who I had experienced for the first time in my life personally in Tunisia. I wanted to so be there with him, and yet my flesh, I felt like it was completely disconnected with my heart, soul, mind, and it was doing something completely different. And I remember there was a point where I was in my sorority room and I was screaming into my pillow, and just because I had enough. I didn't know what else to do. And I remember, dramatically kind of opening up the Bible that my mom had given me, and it was the verse that said, if your right arm sins, like cut it off. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's kind of extreme, but do I need to do that? Do I need to just cut off my limbs so that I can be with my Father? And I remember like right soon after that, there was like kind of like a follow-up conference to the missions trip. And it was actually at the time, it was in Chicago. It was in Chicago, and it was in the winter of Chicago. And we arrived, my friend and I arrived at the conference space at around 2 a.m. So we were exhausted. Like I think I hadn't slept in like 24 hours. I was exhausted, and all I wanted to do was go to sleep. And as soon as we got into the hotel room and I like pass out, I like just drop my stuff and I pass out onto the bed, and I'm like laying there, and all of a sudden I feel this extreme need, an absolute need, an undeniable need to go over to the conference space. So this was like not where like, our conference was, where like the hotel was the conference space. This was different. It was like the hotel was like it was like maybe 2 buildings down from the actual conference space. And I remember thinking like, why in the world would I go to the conference space at 2 a.m.? It makes no sense. And yet I felt like I was almost physically being pulled, like I was literally being pulled out of the bed. And I was supposed to go to this conference space at 2 a.m., exhausted, having not slept in 24 hours. And I remember thinking, I do not want to put my snow like suit on and like all this stuff back on, but I couldn't help it. I had to go. So I went over to this conference space thinking, what in the world am I doing here? There was absolutely no one there that I could see. I was even amazed that the door was open, but I walked in, and I started walking, and finally I heard some praise and worship music coming out of a room. And I started walking towards that sound, and I finally found a room where it looked like there was almost a youth overnight worship kind of prayer kind of situation, I guess. And I sat in one of the chairs, and I saw these 10, 12-year-olds praying and like worshiping, and they were having an overnight prayer. But I remember still thinking, okay, what am I doing here though? Like I still don't get it. And soon I actually met a person who actually I found out went to the same college as me. So at the time I was going to University of California, Davis, and we went to the same school, but we ended up getting into a conversation where I was kind of telling them my situation and just all these questions that I still did not have answered. And I was saying like, I feel like I can't quite get there where I give my life to the Father and truly devote my life to this unless I truly understand. And we actually ended up talking for 7 hours straight that night. And me just asking like tons and tons of questions. And for some reason in that moment, the person was answering all of my questions in a way where my soul and my heart and my mind fully understood. And when I finally asked my last question at like probably, 9 a.m. at that point, we'd been there for 7 hours, I started sobbing. And I felt this warmth, just this amazing warmth coming over my entire body of just acceptance, of love and understanding, and me wanting to give my life to Yahushua Christ, to be a part of his family. And it was truly like being embraced by him. And I remember that person asking me like, are you ready to give your life to him? And I was like, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that was truly like my turning point where I like could not look back. And one thing I forgot to mention was that through our friendship, Justin and I, before Tunisia, we had been, discussing for about a year and a half or a year or something like that. And I remember even in the beginning, like when we met maybe like once or something, Justin had mentioned that the Father had told him that I would be his wife. And at that time, that just sounded so crazy to me. I didn't know him at all, and I thought he was crazy. I'm like, that's... But I remember what's even more crazy is, but I told him that I really saw him as a brother. I really saw him as a brother. I loved our conversations. I loved how he seeked, the Father, the truth, and was actually a man of intelligence. And I loved having intelligent conversations with him. But yeah, I saw him as a brother. But in Tunisia, when I was on that mission trip, I kept hearing audibly over and over again that Justin would be my husband. And what an amazing, like, full circle, just praise the Father that, he brought Justin into my life, that he fought for me, fought for my soul and my ability to be with him. And I'm so grateful. And I'm sure that many listening have similar testimonies of just wonderful just experiences where the Father never gives up on us.
Yeah, let me just add this real quick with regard to, Justin going into the military and the Most High leading him in that direction. I was fully not on board with that. And I told him and I warned him about the vaccines, but lo and behold, that was the path he needed to take in order to meet you and for you to become a couple in Christ and to have each other so that you can be grounded in your faith and also that you can encourage each other to really come full circle to the truth of salvation through Christ, and as far as our Messiah being the way, the truth, and the light. And so I understood, and I also remember that, when he first called me and told me that you guys were going to get married, I was like, wait a second, how long have y'all been dating?
Well, we had been meeting for exactly a year. The day that we started dating, we had already been meeting for, I believe it was either 353 days or 357 days. It was like 2 days before or after the actual date that we had first met. We had been meeting for about a year, and we just ramped up from, once a month to once every couple weeks to every week to like 3 times a week. And at that point, we had never held hands, we had never hugged. It was just a meeting over dinner and her telling me why I was stupid for believing what I did. Of course, it evolved from that.
Right.
But
Right.
when
But
I
they,
learned
there
of her
was.
coming to faith, it was
Mhm.
the most amazing thing. I had seen her
Yes.
go from exactly who I was,
Right.
and I loved meeting with her because I saw like myself in her, that
Yes.
same desire, just because she was asking the questions. Most people,
Right. Exactly.
most people are offensive and don't ask questions. But
Mhm.
she was offensive and then asked all the questions because she wanted to know.
Right. Truly no.
Right. And I felt the same way. So I was so happy when, of course, when she came to find faith. It was so amazing. We did end up getting married, of course. Her mom was so ecstatic that she met a Christian man and that she
Mhm.
wanted to marry a Christian man, and also the fact that we have some Korean blood.
Yes.
Her parents didn't mind that either, but it was a beautiful experience. We have
Yes,
so
on
much
our
more
side
to
of the
cover, but
family.
we only
Right.
have like
Yes.
15 minutes.
Mhm.
Well, we can do kind of a quick overview of how we went from being married to being a part of what you do, Zen.
Yes.
So,
Right. Right.
so after we got married, we went through schooling. I went through schooling and I finished college at UC Davis, and Justin finished his 6 years in the military in the Air Force, and we moved to Georgia. And I was working, corporate and all, and doing my thing in terms. And Justin was going to school when Justin's mother was working for the United Airlines. I think that's what the United
Mhm.
Airlines. And
Yes.
at that time, we got free flights. And I remember Justin was also at that time very, very, very pressed, had this like extreme calling to go out and share the gospel to the ends of the earth. So I remember even him saying that he was just going to fly to Africa and just like without anything, without just be there. And he wanted to just go and be in the streets and just share the gospel. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do that together. So I quit my job. Justin stopped going to school, and we just started traveling with free flights, and Justin sharing the gospel with anybody he could, and me sharing the gospel whenever I felt the. It takes a lot of courage for me to do it. Justin is very straight to the point, but with women and things like that, but when we came back, the idea of going back to 9 to 5 was just so hard for me. Like I really wanted, and I have always been like a very entrepreneurial person. And I was trying to, I remember at the time, Zen, you let us live with you once again. So we were living with you,
Mhm.
and I was sharing with you that I wanted to start my own company, that I had all these ideas, but then at the same time, I was also interviewing for a bunch of different corporate companies, just because that's what I knew for sure could pay the bills. But I remember you asking me, Zen, why don't you just join us for one of our group calls? And just see if it's something you'd be interested in. And at the time I kind of didn't really know what you did at all. I remember actually at the conference, somebody asked me if when I married Justin that I knew that he was your son. And then I was like, maybe, I don't know, a fan of you. And then I tried. Yep, I'm not sure what they were thinking, but no, I did not know who you were. I knew that you're a really cool dude. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, but you're just a cool dude. And just a lover of the Most High and a genuine cool dude. And, but yeah, I remember joining the call and seeing a lot of places that I could actually help, and a lot of places that we as a couple could serve the Most High together with you as a
Yes.
family. And that was just such a joy for me to realize. And so I remember we quickly started working on a better, more streamlined, user experience, and trying to get everything that you were doing under one place. And I think at the time we launched the Ask Me Anythings, the digital readers clubs, and we brought in Gary and Dr. Joy for separate AMAs. Just a lot of different things that we started growing as a family, and we're so grateful that everybody has supported us along the way and grown with us, and we're just so grateful. But yeah, like we also, another thing that we wanted, and this is something kind of like an invitation real quick for our listeners out there as well, but we also wanted to be a kind of almost like a one-stop shop, or like a place where, since our community is so niche in terms of Yah seeking, Yah fearing, truth seekers, like we're truly but a few. And so the idea of having a place where we can all support other content creators, other writers, other people who are putting the work out there, and the word out there of the truth in one place. So that being said, if you have like truth gear that you sell, truth stickers, if you have an album that you are making in terms of your music, you have a book that you're writing, and you want it to be available for our wonderful, beautiful family here, please let us know. Feel free to email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com, and we'd love to support your work. And that's my 2 cents on on our invitation as a family to please feel free to join us. But with that, we also I forgot to mention, during the time that we were traveling, we also got to work with different orphanages and things like that. And that's how the new Endeavor Freedom Orphanage that we just opened up this year started. Maybe Justin, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we did some amazing traveling. Actually, I want to read something that I wrote while we were traveling, but the orphanages are something that are very important to us.
Yes.
If you would like to follow along that, please visit facebook.com/Endeavor Freedom INC. That is our nonprofit. We do support multiple orphanages. You can also go to endeavorfreedom.net and learn more there. But I want to read something that I wrote while we were traveling. That year was something that was, to us, like, it's something that most people will never be able to experience, like going like Paul did to all of the nations and visiting. I don't know if you guys mind if I read something real quick.
No, please, go right ahead.
Okay. So we had traveled all over, and this specifically comes when we were visiting Thailand. Today was amazingly full of blessings. Actually, this whole trip has been full of ironies. We left our beautiful guest house at Ao Nang Beach after making amazing friends. Okay, and just a disclaimer, the beautiful guest houses that we stayed at were like $10, $20 a night. So anyways, after making amazing friends, and we headed to our ferry for Phi Phi Island, where a tsunami took 5,000 lives in 2004. We boarded the ferry and walked through the tiny side corridors towards the front of the ship, and it was filling up with people, but Joy took note of a nice older Canadian couple sitting on the very front of the boat with their feet dangling, and she asked if they wanted her to take a photo of them. They, of course, obliged, and we began talking about our trips and plans and our homes and our jobs, etc. And when they learned that we had visited Israel, we learned that Esther, the wife, was actually born there. And we talked about Hebrew, and they were interested in my testimony. Omar, the husband, he shared his Muslim background and how he turned atheist. And they tested me with many questions. They reminded me of the many barriers I had overcome to find faith in our loving Creator. It was a blessing to share testimony with them, and amazing that we were led to meet this interesting duo who had separated themselves from religion. She was Jewish and he was Muslim. They were very kind and actually impressed. And prayerfully, the seed that was sown will take root and grow up into strong faith. So after landing at Koh Phi Phi Island, we dropped our heavy bags off at the hostel and headed out to explore a little bit before sunset and dinner. I'd read about a Mexican restaurant and some recommendations online, and we ended up We ended our walk there as the stars started shining outside, and the rooftop was open view, and there was a bar seating all the way around the patio. So we ordered a Sprite and we sat down to think about what we wanted to eat. And there were two guys that were sitting next to me, and we made introductions. They were two brothers from France, and they were named Raphael and Samuel. And we talked about our trips and moved straight into discussing their biblical names. After learning of their Jewish roots, we talked about my roots, and they listened intently as I professed my transition from atheism into belief in Israel's history as written in the Tanakh. We discussed the current wars and how all the prophecies have unfolded so precisely. They were interested in how much I had studied prophecy and were intently listening as I discussed Isaiah 53 and how it was fulfilled precisely as well. They were very shocked and seemingly never heard of it before. The mosquitoes are vicious here, and they had forgotten bug spray, so they had to leave, but they agreed to read Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53. Prayerfully, they will find truth, and the seed sown will grow up into everlasting friendship between us and Elohim, who is in their names.
Awesome.
I just wanted to give that quick excerpt. It was just a little like diary entry of what it was like to just go out and to be used. You know, we had no plans on sitting next to, you know, the Jewish guys or meeting a Jewish woman who was married to a Muslim and being able to share. But when you go out and when you just step out in faith, like we did with putting on this conference, the Most High really provides. And I think Joy can talk about that and just the miracles that occurred in putting on this conference.
Since we have so little time left, I'm just going to kind of go into the fact that right before us deciding to do our conference, we actually spent a year going to conferences. We learned so much from going to other people's conferences. But something that we did notice was like some of the most humble conferences where like they didn't have like any knowledge of how to put on a conference or any kind of like, you know, what is it called, audience or anything really to make it great. They just had this one thing, which was this extreme desire to be obedient to the Most High. And they were given this calling and this urgency to put on this conference. And I remember that one ended up being the best one. So the idea was that there are so many, like in terms of logistics that we had to do and learn, but I think the most important part of preparing for this conference was just being in that humble place of asking the Father constantly to lead us, especially with, you know, the coronavirus coming up and all this craziness, speakers dropping out and everything changing. I remember just constantly having to remind myself to be at peace, because whoever the Father wants to have speak will speak. Whoever the Father wants to have in attendance, they will be in attendance. And so just trusting that the Father was truly the organizer of the conference, I think everything just happened so beautifully. And I'll tell a couple of different examples where, you know, we didn't think that we could have something as fancy as a videographer. If any of you have actually seen the live stream of the conference, it was so professionally done. And we were really going to bring our laptop and have like the video camera from the laptop live streaming the conference. And the Father sent us Chris Tompkins, who has a video company. And he told me at the conference that he was like truly pressed to reach out to us and offer and volunteer to do that for us. And wow, what a blessing that was. That, I mean, truly all credit to the Most High. But even things like Tigo, who helped us with our sound. He was our sound engineer during the conference. I had no idea what a sound engineer is or what why that would be a need. But then when we were at the conference, I realized, what would we have done without Tigo? We would have no sound. And yet the Father brought Tigo into he reached out to us even asking if he could help us with the conference. And what a blessing. I mean, so many different examples like that, with Jake Grant helping us last minute with live streaming that we didn't know we needed a certain cord or something that if he hadn't brought for us, we would have not been able to live stream. We had no idea we needed that random cord. But just small, it's not small things, but huge things like that, where the Father just led and brought the right people, exact right people. And even with the masks and things like that, something I want to mention is that when we were there, of course, all of our people, so hundreds of people not wearing masks, and the other hotel, people that were staying there were starting to complain. They were telling why are you letting these people, it's illegal to not wear masks. And the conference space manager actually came up to me with a printed sheet of the laws in the city that we were in. And he highlighted the area where it said that there was a religious exemption at where we were. And he said, if anybody gives you guys problems, just show them this. And I just thought, what a huge blessing that the Father sent us someone who would, make sure that we had the right to breathe, really. But yeah, just what a blessing. And let's see, how much time do we have? That's it. Okay, well, so many more amazing testimonies. Praise the Most High.
We'll do a second part, everybody. But I'll be on with Rob Skiba midnight to 2. God bless all.
And Diane tomorrow for more follow-up.
Yes, with Diane. God bless all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate all that were able to make it to the conference. We will be releasing more of the presentations throughout the coming weeks, and we'll see you next time. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.